Welcome to another episode of Boss Up with Mr. Key, where we talk to the entrepreneurs, we talk to the bosses. And today's guest is someone that I recently met, but I mean, her passion for helping and just, understanding a person's needs and getting down to the bottom of it and solving those problems for agents like myself really reflects in her name. And her operation is top notch for me. Like it's definitely a part of my business, and I appreciate it. And it's a part of most successful agents out there's business. But without further ado, Adrianna Starks, I'd like to introduce you to my show. Please tell them the name of your company, and let's get going.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So my name is Adrianna Starks. I am solo, own my own business as a transaction coordinator, and the name of my company is Supportive Operational Solutions.
Okay.
For short is SOS.
So let's say that again, Supportive Operational Solutions. I like that name, and we're going to touch on that. But before we talk about Adrianna, the CEO, let's start from the beginning. Where did you first taste Similac?
So I was born in Tucson, Arizona.
Oh, okay.
Shortly after that, we moved. I guess I was probably 4 or 5. We moved a little bit up north, still in Arizona, but in a small town where my grandparents lived. And
Oh,
it was just my sister, my mom, and I, and then my
mm,
my grandparents. But so I was raised in a mainly a household full of women.
mm. What I mean that's interesting in itself. And so I'm curious, growing up like that in a household full of women, I mean, what did you see? Did you see like how everybody participated and working in the household, or what was that like?
It was wild. It was wild because, I can say it because I'm a woman. There's a lot of hormones that go in with
Mm,
that. And
yeah.
my mom and my sister, I mean, they're my rocks. They're my best
Mm,
friends. My mom um, has always shown unconditional love. And so if me and my sister were fighting, arguing, whatever, she would never pick sides because me and my sister fought like cats and dogs. But
really?
the cool thing about our relationship, even back then, is no matter how deep we would fight or we would just scream at each other, we always had each other's back at the end of the day.
Mm.
When push came come to shove, if someone was mean to me, she would have my back. And
See, that's good. Like you have your internal, beefs because I mean, let's face it, with my siblings too, like we live together, sometimes share the same bed, everything. You could get tired of that person.
yeah.
People have that right. But when you go outside of the household, that bond and that togetherness was like
Mhm.
no other. So and that's huge. That's huge. So are you the oldest or the youngest or middle?
I'm I'm the youngest, so of
Oh,
my
it's just you, it's just you and your sister and your mom, right? And your grandmother.
there. But
Okay,
my
got it.
dad, he did get remarried. I was about 4 or 5.
Okay.
And I do have 3 younger half brothers. So I didn't grow up with them. So my
Mhm.
dynamic versus their dynamic, it's a house
Mhm.
full of boys, a house
Wow.
full of girls. A very different dynamic. But they're here. My brothers, my dad, my stepmom are here in Texas. So
Okay.
I'm
Is that
closer.
what brought you all to Texas? Or like, let's talk about high school. Where did you go to school?
So I went to school. It's called Mingus Union High School.
Hmm.
Um,
Shout out to Mingus.
I
And
don't know.
where was that in Arizona? What part?
It's in Cottonwood. So have you heard of Sedona?
Yeah, I've heard of Sedona. Yep. Hmm.
I always tell people I'm from Sedona, but that's not true because it's only about 15 minutes outside of Cottonwood, but
Uh-huh.
Sedona's beautiful. Um,
Ah.
I grew up the opposite of that.
Uh-oh.
So
Uh-oh.
if you can't tell, I'm not a fan of my hometown.
Uh-oh.
Um,
So I mean, like hey, like Drake would say, you started from somewhere, now you here. And so like you
yeah.
telling me your town may have had a few mobile homes?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so it's one of
But
those small.
Yeah, more so, this is if it sums it all up, this is what I say. In my town, you either get hooked on drugs or you get pregnant. Well, my sister got hooked on drugs and I got pregnant.
Wow, the statistics caught you, but you know what? Like that didn't end right there, right?
It didn't. I think
So,
that
eh,
was honestly the beginning. Mhm.
so tell me about high school. Like,
Yeah.
what were you into? Like, what did you say the high school Adriana was like?
What was I into?
Yeah.
Boys.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Hey, in a
no,
small town, there's not a lot to do, Wes. So
yeah.
don't judge. I mean,
No, I
I'm just
think
kidding.
that if I would have stayed with the right crowd, I
Hmm.
would have excelled, significantly because the thing about me is I love to learn. I love
Good.
when I'm getting taught something, I have this passion. I'm like, it clicks with me. The light bulbs go off.
Mhm.
But my problem is no one else's fault. I just jumped in with the wrong crowd. We started ditching, and when you fall behind in school, it's hard to catch up. And so
Yep.
I'm kind of like an all or nothing type
Hmm.
personality. And so I didn't know what they were talking about the next day or the next day. And so I just kind of threw my hands up and I just got really discouraged. And, like I said, I kind of went left and I should have went right. And so, yeah, I dropped out of high school in my junior year.
Mm-hmm.
Shortly after that, I was 16 and I became pregnant. I had my son, David, when I was almost 17.
Hmm.
And right after that, I did get my GED.
Good, good.
So,
Man, your story
not,
sounds like mine. I didn't mean to
oh,
cut you
really?
off, but it was same way. Like I was always like high as far as smart, school smarts. Like that came easy. And I kind of like started getting in the wrong crowd. Like it was fun. I mean, I was
Yeah.
just being a rebel. I
Yes.
just I didn't like authority. So any crowd that was going against the authority, like I was with it. And, I had my first child at 17. So, sometimes, your environment, you can blame it on that, but it happens to everybody. Not
Mhm.
everybody, but it happens to many, coming from where we come from. And the one
Right.
thing is that like right now you're here. And so
Yes.
let's talk a little bit more about your story. So at
Yeah,
17, you had your first child.
I
What
did.
was that like? Was that scary?
So my whole pregnancy, I was in such denial. I didn't want to admit that I was pregnant, and my friends were all asking me, and I couldn't even say yes, I was pregnant. I said, "Well, I took a pregnancy test and it was positive." I just couldn't come to
Mm,
terms with it,
couldn't
and
say it outright.
so yeah, so much so that I was so worried that when David, that's my oldest, when
Hmm.
he was born, I was so worried I wouldn't love him because I didn't have that connection. And to
Hmm.
be honest with you, my birth, or when I gave birth, it was very traumatic. I actually had to get airvac,
Mm.
is what they call it, in a helicopter down to Phoenix, Arizona,
Wow.
Glendale, and because he was 6 weeks early, and if he was born at the high altitude where we were in the mountains, his
Hmm.
lungs could potentially collapse. And
Oh,
so
wow.
it was a lot. They tried to stop it, but long story short, David was born. And when he was born, I didn't immediately have that connection where you see like
Yeah.
moms are crying and everyone's so happy. And I
How many
didn't. And I
pounds
was
was
like,
he?
what's that?
How many pounds was
He was
David, you said?
6.
Oh,
He
so
was
he was
good.
6, so he was kind of good. But right
He's good.
away, did they like bring the baby to you? And as a kid, you're probably like, whoa, like
Yeah.
what is this?
So
What's going on?
exactly. So they had to carry him. They carried him into the ICU. They let me get rest. When I woke up, the nurse came in and said, "Okay, mom," which was weird in itself because,
Hmm.
she's calling me mom. But that's what they do. She said, "Okay, mom, are you ready to go see your baby?" And of course I had to say yes. I couldn't say no.
Yeah.
So they wheel me in to the ICU, and here he is in this little container, is what it looks like with wires. And Andre, that is literally the definition of falling in love. My heart
Mm.
broke and I
Wow.
literally just fell in love. And from that moment on, like I've a smother, people call me smother, like I smother, I'm a mother, but I mean, I'm much better now. He's 17 now.
Yeah, he's
So,
getting older, but guess what? Like you still like have that. That's your baby. That's the
mm,
first. Like you've been through a lot with
yeah,
him before he even took his first breath.
right.
And so I love that story. I love that that's how you got that first connection. Like you literally fell in love at first
Yeah,
sight.
yep.
What happened after that? Like, did you have to work, take care of him? Were you a single parent? Kind of
So
after high school, what was that like?
yeah, so my relationship with his dad was not good,
Mm,
at all, and so David was actually I tell him, or I have told him in the past, I really believe he's my guardian angel because if it wasn't for him and again, I think eventually I would have grown up, but having a
yeah.
child changes
Yeah.
you. Like, it's not
Yeah.
just you, you have to provide,
My
and
kids
so
saved me. Having kids early saved me from, I can honestly say, a lot of misery. So, in
yeah,
certain ways. So, let's just
definitely.
leave it at that. For those who know me, they know.
I know, like, my story is not pretty, and I'm not perfect, but
Yeah.
I do know God had a plan, and he had this plan for David to again, whatever you wanna call it, I feel like,
Mhm.
just in a nutshell, he's my guardian angel because I strived more, my heart broke more for people, or, you see the news of tragedies, and it's just your heart changes, but so our relationship was not good to put it lightly. Mine and my ex, excuse
Yeah,
me.
yeah. So I mean, that left it like you were pretty much a single mom, and you had to do what you had to do. I'm
Yeah,
curious of like what did that look like? Now you have to fend for you and another human.
right. So we moved back in with my mom when David was about a year and a half, and I had made the decision I don't want David to grow up in this town. I don't want history to repeat itself. I don't want to
Mm,
be, I'm already a statistic, but I don't want to be a grandma at 34, 35.
yeah.
And I knew my dad lived in Texas, and although I never lived with him, we would visit during the summers, and, I mean, I love Texas. I love it out here because you come from this
Mm,
small town, and then you
yeah.
have so much opportunity, and that's
Plethora of things.
yeah, that's definitely what it was the opportunity, and I said, "Yeah, let's go to Texas," and my mom and my sister jumped on board. They went to
Mm,
Austin. I came to the Dallas area, stayed with my dad for about a month.
mm,
Then my 2 best friends, my 2 girlfriends from Arizona moved up. We got a rental house, and, it was that balancing act of trying to still be an 18, 19-year-old exploring the world. Now you can go to clubs at 18,
mhm. Look at
um,
that.
but still being a mom, and so I grew up a lot from then. I'm
Mhm.
34 now, but there was a lot of learning, and so it's been I was talking to my husband the other day, it's been a struggle because I've always been very self-conscious. I'm trying to be the best mom, but also still be my age, but I've never really been my age, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah,
I've
I get it.
always
We
been
grow up fast. We have kids
yeah,
early. We grow up. It's forced to grow up. I mean, sometimes it's like, how often were you able to just act silly? You know what I mean? And,
right. Yeah.
do these things without worrying about some kind of responsibility as a
Mhm.
parent. Um, man, that's your story is so heartfelt. I'm sitting here like
Oh, thank
connecting
you.
the dots, like, oh, her name is A. My first kid at 17 was D. Her name's Daria. Hers
Oh
is
my
David.
gosh,
Like
that's
you got me,
wild.
you
No
got me
wonder
like
why.
all warm and fuzzy. I
I
love these
love
kind of
that.
stories.
See, and I didn't
I,
know that with you either, so that's
yeah.
super neat to
I like how
connect.
we brought this out. Yeah, this was cool. So it's
Yeah,
funny. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, you're actually getting to see like people who work together actually getting the chance to know each other better. So, but without further ado, I know now it's like your story is so interesting to me that 45 minutes won't serve us justice. So I do want to talk about um, you said you stayed with your dad in Dallas.
mhm,
What was your first job like? Like, or have you always just did stuff and contract and work on your own as a
yeah.
business owner?
Let me try and not take up too much time on this. I started working when I was 12,
Oh,
as a busser, like a bus girl,
yeah.
busser, whatever,
Mm,
and I loved it, loved making money. I loved the consistency, the structure.
Mhm.
And so then fast forward in Texas, I just needed a job. So I actually was an alarm operator for a security system, like is it
Ah,
ADP? I always get
ADT, yeah, it's
ADT.
like
I always
that,
get
yeah.
confused with the two.
Wow.
It wasn't that. It was called Sonitrol Security, but they went out of business. So it was more just job after job, and
Wait a minute. Now, before we talk about job after job, you are not about to glance over the 12-year-old job. Like to be able to kind of, as a kid, see how to earn money. Like,
Mhm.
let's talk about that a little bit. Is there
Yeah.
any impression that that job at that age left on you about maybe hustle or whatever?
I think, gosh, from that moment, I wanted to be, I don't want to say the best because we can be the best version of ourselves. So I wanted to be the
Hmm.
best version of myself. So even to cleaning those tables, I strive to be the best at it because I
Mm,
wanted to make sure there was no sticky spots. I wanted to wipe down the salt. I wanted to help people get their drinks, their waters or
mm,
whatever. Um, I just loved the helping, just
mm,
helping, knowing that I made a difference. Because think about it, when you go to a restaurant, I don't care if it's Taco Bell or
mhm,
McDonald's, you're sitting there looking at which one is the cleanest table.
mhm.
And it's a struggle sometimes. You're like kind of disgusted. You just want
Yeah,
to
I
sit
can't even
down.
sit down. Yeah.
Yeah. So to be able to just make someone's day in a very small way, I think that's where it all started was just starting out bussing tables and making it clean and filling up those ketchup packets or the salt and pepper, whatever it was.
That makes sense to who you are today. Like that description right there says a lot. I mean, you pay attention to detail and you
Mhm.
make sure that I don't know, just working with you has been very pleasant. I enjoy
Thank
like
you.
everything that you said you learned as, a 12-year-old bus girl. I see it. I see where it built that. And so that's one of the things I like to share with my audience. No matter where you come from, like there's things that start to build that work ethic or those fine details of the I mean, I'm in the business because I love helping people. And so
Mhm.
that's another key principle. So, okay, let's talk about it. Let's fast forward a little bit, so you were surviving out here. You were doing what you had to do. And then like when did real estate become something that you gained an interest in?
So I never thought, I'll tell you real quick, I never thought I'd have the opportunity to do what I'm doing now. And I don't take it for granted every single day. I'm so grateful and thankful because I never thought this would be my life. Um, Not saying that I've made it, I haven't made it like big, but I've made it this far. And so
Hmm.
I'm very grateful. And so I would go to work. Have you heard of The Buckle? It's a clothing store.
Yeah, I've heard of the buckle. Yeah, they'll be in like outlet malls and stuff like
Yes.
that.
So I used to work there, and the girls, I've always felt like the outcast, number 1, because I had a child so young, I'm a mom,
Mhm.
but also I'm not from this area. We come from humble beginnings, and we
Yeah.
didn't have what a lot of people have, and so I'm working with these quote unquote rich kids and dressed to
Privilege.
the nines and have cars that were bought from I was driving a beat up Chevy Cavalier,
Hmm. Yeah,
so
I get it.
I would go to work crying, but I knew I had to work. I had to make a living and it was commission based so you can, make some money there. But there was one day the my apartment community called me and they said, "Hey, this is so and so from the office. Can you give me a call back?" It was a voicemail.
Mhm.
And I got so nervous and I thought, "Oh my gosh, my rent bounced. Like,
Right,
why are
dang.
they calling me?" So I called them back and they said, "You've just always been so pleasant. You're in and out of the office, using the computer, printing, whatever. Would you like to be the leasing consultant?"
It happened like that?
It happened like that. And so
Dang.
I used to work nights and weekends. So going to work at essentially 9 to 5, still had to
Right.
work weekends was amazing and in an office. And that's where I'd say my career, I guess, really peaked.
Mm.
I got to know the not even real estate, but I'm talking about the apartment side of things. I was
Yeah,
like,
the leasing side, like, yeah,
yeah, and I just
property management and grounds management, like, it
yeah,
it entails a lot. I know
yeah.
that.
And there
Mm.
is a real estate side of it. I was just in the office, and
Okay. Okay.
I work in several different companies, across, I guess, over 10 years. But
Mm.
each time when I'd leave a company, it was because I was promoted to a different position. And so I truly and strongly believe, although I don't have, college credentials or that
Mm.
experience, I ended in a corporate position,
Mm.
very well paid.
Mm.
And I believe it's because of my attitude and my work ethic. And I hate talking about myself, but I tell my son this. I said, not everyone needs to go to college. I mean, I don't
Mm.
care again where you're working, Taco Bell, McDonald's. You can be the owner of several. Like, you just have to have that passion, that drive, that
Yeah.
consistency. I mean, you just have to make a difference, at
Yeah.
the end of the day.
That's
Stand out
crazy.
from the person, when you drive up through the drive-through, be happy and, "Hey, what can I get for you today?" Instead of, "Yeah, what can I get?" It's huge
Hmm.
difference.
Hey, details. I was listening to this TED talk the other day, and the guy was a waiter in Manhattan somewhere. And these three people are at the table, and they was like, "Man, this was a great trip, but we didn't get to taste one of those New York style hot dogs." So the waiter heard this ear hustling. He went through the kitchen, ran down the street to the bodega, got like four hot dogs, and brought them back. And the people were like, "Wow!" Like they were
See?
like, "How the hell? Like this is amazing." He said he could have
Uh,
brought caviar and a bottle of wine. This is an upscale restaurant, but he brought those hot dogs, just
yeah,
going the extra mile. So I was like, man, that's a pretty cool story. But
that is.
you
It's
know, you
huge.
said some similar stuff to what I worked at a university, and I used to tell people like, hey, first you have to figure out what you want to be. Now, college may help, but if you have an idea, whatever it is, if like you said, if it's working at McDonald's, if you're passionate
Mhm.
about that, you might own six franchises. So
Yes,
it's
sir.
funny you said that. Like that, I believe that. Like
Yeah,
if you're really passionate and it's something that you are going to give your all and pay attention to the detail, it's a good start. So you glancing over a lot of stuff that I want to talk about, like the impression that you had to make, going into the office on a daily, speaking to people. Like you could have easily just been standoffish. I don't want to, have your hoodie on and just walk in. But something you must have did that left an impression. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I think, just with anything, whether I'm working at a place or flying on an airplane, I just think it's so important. Whether it's a smile you notice on someone, their shirt,
Mm.
their necklace, you just never know how much you can make someone's day by just complimenting. And it doesn't always have to be a compliment, but maybe just spark up a little conversation. Like, it all starts with, "How are you doing?"
Mhm.
But sometimes you can feel a vibe on someone that maybe they need a little bit more than that. And so I
Mm.
think that's just how I've been with people in general. Not saying that I go to everyone, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, how are
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
How are you?" No, but I do make it a point if I'm kind of in a smaller setting, even an elevator, I make it a
Mm.
point to just say something. I don't think I've ever just stared straight. It's too awkward for
Mm.
me. So I'll
Yeah.
maybe look at their shoes, or I notice their kids with them. So I'll talk to their kid. And I just think it's important, that interaction, and just
Mm.
for you to recognize something. And again, if it's someone's smile, like, tell them that. Like, beautiful smile. And it just made their day.
Mm. Another key to success right there, like being able to speak to people, make people feel comfortable when they're around you, be genuinely interested,
Mhm.
and just like people in a small setting, like you said, in an elevator, why be quiet? Say something, lighten up the room, let them know, hey, and you said sometimes you'll have that intuition where it's like, hey, I feel like this, just saying something to this person and their response, I feel like they needed an extra word. And you're not afraid to say that and
Mhm.
leave that impression on people. So I think that's big. That's one of the first keys I think of business, especially when you're in a service industry where you're helping people like we are. Our business
Mhm.
is about helping people meet their goals or meet their needs. And you can do it grumpy or you can do it with a smile, be able to change the mood, give good words of encouragement. So now the success that you've been having, I'm seeing how it all ties together.
Thank you.
So let's go to SOS. Let's go to SOS. So you mentioned you were at the apartment complex, and basically you had made your way to corporate America. Teen mom got her GED,
Yeah.
made her way to corporate America. But then at some point, it was like it was a key moment that happened to you.
Mhm.
What was that?
So I felt like I couldn't be proud of who I worked with at that corporate role. I love the role itself, but you'll little by little, everyone started to fall off, like the good people,
Right.
and I just felt this pull. I honestly felt like God set this in my heart. There was a peace about me the previous, excuse me, prior 2 months before I gave my notice.
Mhm.
There was just this peace. And
Mm,
call me crazy, I decided to do something I'd never done before. And I was just praying about it. Like, what can I do to be present with my family, be happy, be me? Because I felt like a caged bird. I really did. I felt
mm,
like I was in the office all day. I had to keep my head down. I mean, that's just how I felt.
yeah.
And I needed to get out of there. And so God placed it on my heart, open an in-home daycare. I could be at
Mm.
home. I can be with my kids. It's my own business, and the whole idea, the business side of the idea excited me. Like having
Mhm.
a schedule. Again, I'm very routine, very consistent. We could do playtime activities, etc. And so that's what I did. I gave notice. I got my license through the state. I became a in-home daycare provider. I did that for about a year and a half, but I will stop and say for those who work with kids day in and day out, I give them so much respect because it's
Yeah.
hard. It is mentally challenging. And I felt like, you get onto your own kids, like when they're fighting or when they're throwing things or
Yeah.
this and that. And that's what I felt like the days was
Oh, yeah.
constant separation, stop, 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 and
Oh, it takes a lot of patience. Oh.
yeah, but I had this idea like I'm a fun person. I could do activities, but it was so much more than that. It's so
Hmm.
much more. So kudos to anyone who works with children. I thank the teachers all the time.
Definitely.
But what happened was, had I not done this, had I not been home, I had a friend who actually told me what a transaction coordinator was, and I
Mhm.
was like, "What is that?" Like, I love the sound of it. I love
Mhm.
everything about it, the admin work. You can even be your own TC. And so
Yeah.
anyways, I bought a course. I'll tell people real quick, don't ever buy courses unless you do your homework on the course.
Mm.
It was expensive, but I don't think I got
Oh.
what I needed from it. And so it allowed me while the kids were napping, about the rest time was like 2 hours a day.
Uh-huh.
I was taking my real estate or taking the classes, the courses for it.
Mhm.
Had I been at a job, a 9 to 5, like where I was used to the corporate, I would have never had the guts to do what I'm doing. I wouldn't have
Mm.
believed I could go out of
Mm.
my own, because I took a huge pay cut when I left corporate to do
Mm. To do your own thing, right?
to open the daycare. And so number one, that was okay. We made it. We got it. We're here. So now that I don't want to say the daycare didn't work, just again for
It
me,
didn't work for you.
it
Like,
did
it
work for
sounds like it
me.
was on a just knowing your personality, it was on the uptrend, and then you
Yeah.
just realize that, "Do I really?" That's good right there. How many people can have that conversation with themselves and say, "Hey, this direction that I'm going in, I'm sure you invested time to get licensed, taking the test." How many people
Yeah.
can say, "Hey, you know what? Like, let's switch directions."
Mhm.
Like that's big. And so you were able to do that.
Yep.
Um, and
That's
so you got into like taking a real estate exam, and I remember my days of doing that, and it took a hell. It took me a long time to do it online, Wes. I think it took me maybe 6 months. I was working a job, coming home, spending an hour here and there, and
mhm.
it took me a very long time. But you got it done. How
Mhm.
many times did it take you to pass the test?
One.
What? Okay, okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was very fortunate. I couldn't believe it when I walked out. He said, "Congratulations, you passed." I said, "Both of them?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay," and I tried to take it before he took it back. I was like, "Oh, wait. Is that me or is that someone else?" So, no, I, because they try and trip you up. You know how it is.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. They should be helping, not, like, trying to trick you.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So, no, I was surprised, but I was grateful.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I actually made a list, every time the kids would sleep, I would do my studies, and I started making a list. What do I need to do to start my TC business? And
Mm.
one of those things was reach out to any realtor and network, or ask them, kind of quiz them, like, what would you look for in a TC? I happened to stumble upon one who I thought was just an agent. She was actually a broker. Again, I'll
Mm.
try and speed this up, but she ended up offering me a job as her office manager. She needed an office manager, and she said, in
Wow.
return, I can help you on the back end. Well, I worked with her for a little under a year,
Mhm.
and the financially, it just wasn't making sense.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because then I was back to work, whereas here it made sense because I'm at home, I'm not driving, I'm not eating out, I'm not
Yeah.
taking tolls. And so,
Exactly. You
yeah,
saving on a lot of expenses. I hear gas is expensive nowadays, but
yeah.
I
So,
drive EV. I don't even want to go to
oh,
the gas
okay, okay, I
station.
was gonna say you would know because you drive, but okay, never mind.
I just charge.
Gotcha, I
But
love that. One day soon for me.
come
Um,
on, convert over to the other side.
so, it just financially wasn't making sense, and I was at a crossroads, and just really struggling. Again, this is probably a whole nother
Hmm.
podcast, episode, because I can get
But you
into
did
it
struggle though in the beginning though,
a
right? Like
lot,
it took I
a
mean,
lot.
like and we all do, and we fall on our face. But what gave you like the aptitude to have the persistence and consistency, even during those ugly and early struggles, to keep
Yeah.
going?
There's 2 things. First, I have to say, like, I can't take the credit. It's all God. But
Mm-hmm.
second was my support system. And I think
Mm.
that's so important because I was feeling like the worst mom because I wasn't making money at this job. So, what gives me the right to then start a new business with no money? It didn't make
Mm.
sense. But
Mm.
God kept telling me, again, you didn't get this far to only get this far. And
Yeah.
I just felt this, and I was crying to my husband. I'm like, "I'm a bad mom. Don't celebrate me on Mother's Day. We don't have any money."
Mm.
He said, "This is your passion, and I know you're gonna make it. You just have to
Mm.
push through." And I mean, I was feeling awful. We were borrowing money from in-laws. I mean, it got rough.
Mm.
And the worst timing, believe it or not, we had prior, when like money was good, me and my husband had planned our 10-year vow renewal because we didn't
Mm.
have a wedding. So we were
Mm.
doing it on our anniversary and all the expenses that came with a wedding. So
Yeah.
all of this was happening. And
And you look at you trying to start a business. You start beating yourself up about that. I can
where they
tell.
do
It's like,
that at? You know what I'm saying? Like,
like
come
what?
on.
I'm
So,
always doing something.
yeah,
But guess what though? Let's keep. Let's see
yeah,
what
yeah.
happens. Let's hear the
So
story.
so honestly, I was just, when I didn't feel like it, when I felt so, so low, I still was, relentlessly sliding into DMs like, "Hey, I could bring you this service," in a more
Hmm.
personal way, not just like
Yeah.
a typical business. Hi, I'm it was
Yeah,
very
yeah. I
me.
mean, it's a skill set to be
Yeah.
able to do that. Because right now, what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is she didn't have a marketing budget, so she just did her own marketing.
Oh
She just
man, I did.
marketed it on IG, talking to people.
Yeah.
Wow. And when did
So
you get your first you said you got a bite with the brokerage that didn't work out, but what was the next big break that you had?
So my sister, who's in Austin, and her
Mhm.
team lead, they're both with EXP. They gave me their deals. I had a close friend.
Mhm.
She trusted me, and in my eyes, I'm like, why are these people trusting me? I don't
Mhm.
know what I'm doing. I did at a bird's eye view, but
Yeah,
I
but
didn't know.
experience is different once you
Oh, it's
dive
so
in.
different. It's so different, and I'm grateful for it. Because man, looking back, if I would have known like all the nitty-gritty now, I wouldn't have had the confidence to do it. I can't even say it was confidence. I just again, it was out there, but I would have been so intimidated, like, "Oh gosh, there's so much more to this," you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I just knew, um, I had to do it. Like, I would go so EXP is kind of I found my niche just because I have the majority of EXP agents,
Yeah.
and I would actually go onto their website, and I would copy and paste 100 agents a day, and I would
Mm.
email blast them because again, I didn't have the money to market or pay for
Right.
that. So I would copy and paste their names, and I would do an email blast to
Did you have
them.
a formula like where, hey, for every 100, I'm sure to get like 2 responses? Like, did you
I
get
don't
that
even think
detail with it?
I didn't even get one. I'll tell you what my bread and butter was. It was me going out to networking events and Instagram.
Mm,
I think the
mm.
more people that knew I was real, I'm a real person.
Yeah, you're so much more
Um,
personable.
yeah, and it wasn't even me trying to go out and slide my card. I really just had to get to know someone because when they knew me on a personal level and I knew them, I think it would have been so much easier. Like, hey, trust me, just give me the opportunity and I'll prove to you what I can do. And then it became like referral based. And
Yeah.
then the people that I used to DM, they then came back around a couple months later and said, hey, you reached out to me a few months ago, even though they never responded to me back then.
Mm.
And so
Coming
it's,
back around now.
yeah, they came
The
back
seeds
around.
that you sowed are starting. It might have been a drought for a bit, but it's starting to
Yes.
yield harvest. Look
I
at
was
that.
like, back then they didn't want me, but now I'm hot.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
Mhm.
Hey, your story again is so amazing. I'm just thinking about how I like bumped into your company. A friend of mine who doesn't use that's this person is an agent, but they don't use a transaction coordinator. I
Yeah.
was like, man, I need this. Like, I had to let go of mine that I had for like 5 years, which was tough. And
Yeah.
so, I have this thing about trusting people with my business, and it's kind of like, I'm too hands on.
Yep.
And somebody said, hey, just sent me, try this person, and sent me like your IG. And I forget, I think I communicated with you, and then we had a conversation, and it was just like, all right, I trust this girl because we
Yeah.
have to trust you with a lot. And so I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, good. Like, even though she's in a different state, I've never seen her in person. Like, when we had that first conversation, it was like we didn't even say, "Hey, let's see if you like it." It was just kind of
Yeah.
like, "All right, this is a match. Let's start and try to get going." By the way, I got a couple of like transactions that I'd like to see you get started on,
Yeah.
and that's been a good decision. Sometimes it's hard hiring good people, but
Mhm.
like I rolled the dice on this one and I got lucky. So, cheers to
Yeah.
you. And we're talking about again. I think just looking at this whole thing maybe even at 12, learning how to like deal with different people, then going to the buckle and
Mhm.
dealing with like that set of people, then going into like the apartment complex and dealing with like a wide array of people. Somewhere you've developed the skill to be able to have the emotional intelligence to communicate with a wide array of people.
Mhm.
Tell me about that a little bit.
So I think that's honestly, you're really good at picking up those because it's almost like I'm in a therapy session because I'm like, oh yeah, even down to when I was a busser.
Mm,
So I think what got me to continuously move up was that I was willing to have those tough conversations with angry clients because at the end of the day, and even in real estate, we are all working towards one goal. I don't know why the seller's agent and the buyer's agent have to, you know,
mhm.
I get it to a point, to an extent, don't get me wrong, but why they have
Yeah.
to have their cards close to their chest. Hey, we all want to get to the finish line. Your client wants to sell, my client wants to buy. Like, let's work together and do it
Mm.
in a pleasant way. And so a lot of times the customers would come in and again you see it too much and I could never do it. It's just not in my soul. I could never just tell a customer off. Sometimes I wish I
Yeah.
could, but I just can't.
It
And
won't
so
get you too far.
no, I don't think
Trust
it
me.
does. And so instead, you sit down and you listen. You truly
Mm,
listen. And if there's something in your power you can do, then do it. And if there's not, maybe just to kind of ease it, say, let me look into this and I will get back to you. But here's the key, get back to them. Don't drop the
mm,
ball because they've just wasted so much of their time explaining their concerns to you and they thought you cared and you're just another number now that, prove them right. No one ever got back to them. So I think for me, when
mm.
I would follow up, when I'd listen and follow through and come up with a solution if I could, or even if I couldn't, just relating to them and saying, like, listen, this sucks. And if it was up to me, I would do that. But
Mm.
unfortunately, XYZ. So I think it's just
Mm.
being real. Like,
And without you, did you ever take like some kind of training, or is this just, because you're touching a lot of key elements of, being able to build some rapport with people, like just genuinely want to listen. And it
yeah.
seems like when you get like the person's needs, you go deeper than the surface level. A lot of times people will say, "Hey, what are you trying to do?" And oh, I just want to do this, and it's really surface level. And
Mhm,
if you take that and run with it, you truly can't meet those people needs.
mhm,
And for some, your knack is to be able to help people dig a little deeper with you and
mhm.
tell you, "Hey, you're like, okay, that sounds good. What else?"
Yeah.
And you genuinely want to hear it, and that opens up people, and I think that helps you connect with people. And
Mhm,
it's something about the energy flowing. As the more energy that flows in one direction, it's hard to stop. And so
mhm.
as you connect and you spread that good energy, like it seems like it flows right back around to you and continues to get bigger and bigger and fuel you.
Yeah.
So that's my analogy for the day, Wes.
Yeah. No, I love it, and that's what it is. I think my love language is I'm a gift giver, not doesn't necessarily have to
Mm,
be a physical gift, but when I was in corporate and I would go to train and motivate people, whether it was one-on-one or in a group setting, I loved seeing light bulbs go off, and they were
right.
struggling with this software and they didn't know how to do it, and I showed them a way, and when I would show them a way, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, you just made my life easier." And I'm like, "Yay, like that's what I'm here for?" So,
That's cool. I love that. I love that. So again, now you have your operation going, and you're working with. I see you posting. You got a few agents under your belt. Um, if if people were in your situation in the beginning, and someone out there that's listening, a little boy or a little girl that is, or an adult, someone that's kind of like, hey, think I want to do something. I have the skill set, I have the love for helping people. Like, what would you tell them?
I would tell them whatever their passion is, see if they can elevate it in the workforce. What
Mm,
can they do with their passion? Maybe it's sewing. Okay, well, they're great at sewing, but what are you going to do with that? Are you going to create a brand?
mm,
Are you just going to give gifts? I mean, I think that you have to find what you're good at. And again, it's very intimidating for me. 16 and pregnant, dropped out of high school. Again, I didn't think I would have my own business. It's very surreal. And um, I know that it's only going to go up from here. I don't want to give up. This is my passion. I would be so discouraged when people would talk about their passion and their purpose because I didn't have one. I'm like, well, I don't know.
mm,
I know what I'm good at and it's people.
mm,
But I like admin work too. But what does that mean for me? And so again, when I was introduced to this world, I feel like you shouldn't have a plan B because
Go
guess
all
what?
in, huh?
If you're all in, then what is the other option? And so I think that someone with their passion, find out what their passion is, and then what can they do with it
I
to make
like
it a
that.
career.
I like that. Hey, go all in and just be, if you're passionate about it, attack it,
Do it.
do it. But you did put it in a good term of, hey, how do you monetize this? How do you change this into like a company or
Mhm,
offer something? And
mhm,
it evolves like, hey, just for the person, your scenario of a person wanted to sew and they started away, giving away gifts in the beginning until they decided, hey, I want to make a brand. Like, if you're passionate about it, start it, do it.
yeah.
Like, we started this podcast because I love talking to people and I don't know where it's going to go, but hey, we just doing it out here and learning as we go. And I like that. One last segment.
Okay.
Man, you're right. We're gonna need a part two. I
Yes,
I,
you
I
do.
definitely enjoy this, but I got three words, and I had three words written down, but I think I'm just gonna go off the cusp
Okay.
and let's let's see what they mean to you. So the first word, Mrs. Starks, is family.
In one word, this
No,
probably
not in
everyone
one
can.
word.
Okay.
You can give me a sentence, no paragraph.
Oof. See, you're putting me on the spot. I'm not good. Well, in one word, family is everything. Everything. That's the word that comes to mind. That is why I'm doing what I'm doing, to not limit myself from the memories I'm going to be able to create with them.
Mm,
Um, and by that, like, just real quick, my daughter, she has asthma pretty bad, so I was having to call in, and I always work from home. They were fine. My employers were fine, but I just didn't want to come across this person calling in. I mean, it at least be a couple times a month, like maybe twice,
mhm,
and my husband would take turns. But um, I pray and I'm thanking God when my daughter's homesick, I'm here and I'm still
mhm,
working, and nobody has to know that. Um, so, because I'm a hard worker, but I always felt the need to prove to someone, hey, I'm working, I'm here. It's just very uncomfortable. So, yes, family is everything.
That's good. You know, that's why it's part of us inside thing. But on the like on the weekends, you're spending time with your family. You're not sacrificing that for anyone, and I
Mhm.
admire that as well. So, all right, so that's a good description of the first word, family. The next one is innovation.
Oh man, where do I want to go with this one?
That's a good one. I got you.
Because yeah. Um, what comes to mind is, and I may be going off tracks here, but okay,
Whatever
just
first
when you,
comes to mind.
okay, is staying relevant and
Mm,
always growing. You know,
mm,
that's just what's coming to mind.
mm. That's
Because you should
innovative.
never get too comfortable, because then you're gonna miss that train. You
Mm.
know, you're gonna
Got to
miss
keep
it.
evolving. You can't
Keep
just
evolving. Yes,
can't stay
that's what's coming to
stagnant.
mind.
I
Yeah.
like that. That's a good piece. That's a good gem.
Thank
And
you.
then the final word is it's kind of an acronym.
Okay.
SOS.
So I'm hoping most people know what that means, but that's help. You know, that's the acronym for help. And that is why I named my business what I did, Supportive Operational Solutions. And to sum it up, when you need help, and that's what I find a lot of realtors when they're at their breaking point, because they don't trust, and I'm there with them. They don't trust people with their business. No one's going to do it like them. But when they finally have reached that point, they need help. Who are they calling? That's me. And, you know, I think a lot of times when they give me that opportunity, maybe we've learned from each other. There's things that you do that I'm going to kind of take and apply it to my next, you know,
Mhm,
transactions moving forward, and vice versa. You're like, oh, I didn't know people did that.
mhm.
I'm going to do that. So
Exactly.
there's a TC for everyone. I feel like there's enough business to go around, and I have a great group of clients that I absolutely love working with, and I'm so glad I met you because you're awesome.
And that's amazing. You're awesome too. And that's kind of where I want to wrap this up, man. It's you know, I always come on here and say, hey, I always ask the guests, hey, good help is hard to find, right? And everybody's like, yeah, but like good assistance, a partnership, which is what we have. When it comes and it comes along that way, it just feels better. I mean, to me, and so again, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I want to thank you for working with my company and helping me grow. And I want everyone out there to know like what you do and how you do it. And I think the key word today for me is passion. Like your passion shines through. This is another episode of Boss Up with Mr. Key. I almost forgot. I got this shirt on. This is Rouse Volleyball. My daughter is in the quarter regional finals here. They have a game tonight.
Oh,
And so I'm stoked. I'm glad about our guests. I'm stoked about this episode. Another one of Boss Up with Mr. Key is in the books. Thank you again, Mrs. Starks. Till
thank
next
you.
time.